Monday, April the 18th, Committee of the Whole meeting. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, motion to approve. Councilor Colcott, second by Councilor Neary. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, 3D conceptual groundwater model of landscape. First off, I'll turn it over to staff for a brief comment, and then go to the
Sure. It was brought to the staff's attention that GW Solutions was doing 3D modeling for other areas within the district. So the staff thought it would be prudent for the district to actually help give some information on this 3D modeling so that we could incorporate a lot of it into our well fields and other areas within the district. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Winley, and you guys can do it.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. So we are going to present some results of the 3D modeling that has been completed. Matt is the person, the GIS expert at COTW Solutions, and he conducted the study, so he's going to present the results.
Hello everyone, thank you for having us. My name is Matt Bardell, I work with COTW Solutions, and I'm just going to run you through the model and initially start off with what the ingredients of the model are and what it is and what it is not. The opening screen here, you can see that it's quite colorful and visual, but the colors have a code, and I'll just present that to you. What happened to it? Technology is so much. Okay, the model is only as good as its data, its assumptions, and the technology that's used to create. So this is not the final answer on the aquifers within the district. It's our best shot at it using the tools that we have and data that we have at this current moment. The model, the technology we've used is updatable as new information arrives. We can refresh it, update it, produce a new one. We've basically taken a shot at packaging, putting a framework on the system that provides us with water within groundwater district. So what you'll be seeing here are some of the elements in 3D, including boreholes, wells that were drilled down, water wells. Each color represents an interval of distinct hydrogeological characteristics, materials, permeable materials versus less permeable materials. The initial water level recorded in the wells are little blue spheres. And then we can see the recognizable surface features of the surface topography that give it context. So as we go through, blue elements, water, aquifers, green elements, aquitars, less low permeability layers. Yellow and red are unclassified permeable materials, which may be an aquifer, may not be, we're not certain. Purple layers are also unclassified, but lower permeability material. And pink represents bedrock. And there's the two main components of the system, the fractured bedrock system, which is a deeper system typically, and the overburden sand and ground still. So we work with the WELS database. It's the main source of the raw information, raw data that we use to interpret, to run the model. And we have a series of algorithms and processes we go through to clean this data up and to place the raw drillage descriptions that come off of the driller's logs and are recorded in the database into a coherent framework. And once again, dividing things up into aquitars and aquifers. And so the translation between these two, the raw drillage descriptions, coarse sand and gravel, brown sandy clay, gray sandy glacial till, all kinds of, those are fairly straightforward descriptions. Sometimes they get quite wacky. Translating that into a coherent framework and layers within this system. So here's the Harvey Road well field in 3D. That's the actual well field property. Get here. This is Bloods Creek. This is the Island Highway. A little bit louder, sorry. The Island Highway running through here. This is the light industrial land, south of the highway. So as we peel back the layers, the main component is topography. We have the advantage of having LiDAR, which is laser pulse light, which gets very accurate information on the surface topography. It was available in Nanaimo and up in the foothills and part of Lensville. And what LiDAR does, again, that vertical accuracy is critical because we're next to the ocean. And saltwater intrusion and interaction with creeks is critical. Getting that vertical axis quite accurate is important in these studies. From the water levels, these blue dots, we can infer a general hydraulic gradient, the slope of the groundwater, and which way it's flowing. Obviously, it flows towards the north and the ocean. Bedrock topography is very important. And the shape of that bedrock surface beneath everything has a lot of control over groundwater flow. This is the geo-volume, the volume of the Harvey Road aquifer that we've inferred from the available data. And I'll show you in a moment in 3D what that looks like when you spin it around. This is the aquitar, the low permeability layer that encases that aquifer, that critical groundwater resource, protects it from contamination from the surface. Although there is potentially some communication with underlying bedrock and potentially the aquifer overlying, so it's quite well confined in the terminology we use in terms of confined from the surface. However, there may be some communication with other elements within the framework. This is the unconfined aquifer, that's the more widespread aquifer throughout Lensville. And then the upper aquifer.
So that really shows that we're dealing with a sandwich of layers, starting with the bedrock, and then you have the older material that are just above bedrock, and then we have less conductive material that cap the lower aquifer, the buried aquifer, and on top of that we have younger material which is permeable, which is what we call the unconfined aquifer. That's why we have the sequence of those layers, and the geometry of these layers is very different because it results from thousands and thousands of years and hundreds of years and hundreds of thousands of years of erosion and deposition. So it's a very it's not big blocks, big sand boxes. It's very ununiform. So I think it's the interest of these 3D models is to try to regenerate the complex geometry of those deposits.
So what the model allows us is we can slice through this three-dimensional object any which way we'd like, and this is just a vertical slice through the Lensville well field. These are the wells that are used, and that aquifer material in that slice appears as a blue lens. It's discontinuous, and it's above the bedrock. In some cases, it's quite high within the column, but it's a discontinuous lens. So now I can give you a brief demo of what the model does. So I can turn on various elements of the model just so everyone is situated here. The Harvey Road well field is right here. Turn the wells up. So we have the wells from the database and the borehole intervals, which are color coded. You can see the blues. The aquifers get quite thick up to the south here, and down at Harvey Road we're quite low in the system, and that creates a lot of pressure within that aquifer, and the water levels are quite high within the well field. If I turn on the aquifer layer, There it is. And you can see really well what the assumptions are within this model. We have control, we have data where there are wells that will do the effort. Outside of that area, we don't have a lot of information, and we suppose it is there, but we don't know for sure.
Actually, that's one of my questions. So this is modeled based on those wells specifically?
Yes.
So when you get off to those the area that you just showed with the marker there, how do you figure that out?
Well, within the software that we use, there are interpolation engine algorithms that will project out based on the available data, and there are many different ways you could interpolate those, including using some artistic license and actually hand draw those inferences in and let the computer work around that. In this case, I've been very say liberal with the interpretation. Let it run and use the available data.
And that's where, for example, in the area to the left there right now from the main wells that are there, there's nothing on the outside of that to kind of interpolate between this point and this point. So how do you determine or even theorize how far out it goes from, like right where the pointer is right now, for example?
Yeah. Well, I think it's based on the interpretation of the intervals encountered in those in the available boreholes. If you see it over here, if you don't see it over here, it's disappeared somewhere in between.
Which I get, but when I'm looking at the area that's now to the right, there's some in the center there, but there's nothing on the outside to interpolate between. So like there's those wells there, and then you've gone to the right, you've got a big area of blue.
Yeah.
But it takes into account the topography of the bedrock, for example.
Okay.
And of course, with deposits, the horizontal plane is a key factor, right? So it takes, and if you have information from 4 boreholes on one side and from 2 boreholes on the other side, it will weight the information according to the quantity of the data which is available. And it will take all this into account, and there are some algorithms that take into that, and it will be at 22 meters or 25 meters or 28 meters, depending on the set of data that you and what the computers does, what the model does. Yeah.
Okay.
So this kind of illustrates that concept. I've sliced a vertical slice through along the gradient or the general slope, and you see that dark blue layer or lens, it disappears up here, and probably disappears because bedrock is rising towards the hills.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's some it is, like I said at the beginning, it's only as good as the data you have. Ideally we'd have borehole skills everywhere and lots of information that's not realistic. As new information comes in, we can always interpret it. If that aquifer, if the well was drilled tomorrow out here and we didn't find the Harvey Road, great, additional piece of information. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we didn't just do the Harvey Road well field. We went basically to where the Geologic Survey of Canada or National or NRCan 3D model that extended throughout the RDN. It ends at Nanoose landfill, the border. So we went all the way towards the south and northern area of landfill. So towards the east, this is the property commonly referred to as Bunny Land on Brightland Road. And what we can see here there are 2 systems. There's a deeper dark blue system, and there's an upper system. They're disconnected, but possibly connected because we just don't have the data to assess that. We have to do pumping tests and so on. But based on the available data, we can see that yes, there's an ecosystem just above the bedrock. It's confined. It has a green aquitar layer that's isolating it from the surface. And it has higher yields. The red dots in this case are symbolizing a higher yield. In this case, 50 US GPM for this well, 25 for this. The aquifer up here, we're looking at 6 GPM, 5, 4, somewhere in that range. So this synthesizes a lot of information in the wells database and places it all in context. Gives you a picture of where the various yields are and how those aquifers are positioned within the framework. So now moving over to the Southwind Drive area. We can see that based on the available water elevations within those wells, we can interpret a general trend of groundwater sloping towards the ocean. And interestingly enough, there's a lot of uncertainty or a lot of potential to look into the communication of the wetlands along that margin along Upper Mansfield because the hydraulic gradients are coming from that area.
Yeah, so here just those lines indicate the top of the water table. So this is the topography of the water table. So it slopes down, and here we have a high, and here we have a low topography, and the water table hit the ground. So this is an area where we have wetlands.
So that could potentially be groundwater daylighting within the surface water regime, or it could be the slow recharge from those surface water entities back to groundwater.
Sorry to interrupt. So can you just explain where that slices again? So you said that was the Southwind area and wetlands to the left. So are we looking at like up on Normandie with the Duck Marsh area? Okay.
Yeah, here you recognize that a breakwater. Maybe I'll just take this list. So here's the highway. Here's Southwind Drive, and is that the wetland? Yeah. So if you look at now I'm just going to look down on this. So here's those hydraulic contours. Well, the color looks much better on my screen down there. Again, sloping to the north through the ocean. This is the Southwind Drive area with extensive reliance on groundwater. The contours become quite convoluted in that area, and that's simply due to the fact that these water levels were obtained over many generations of wells, many years, many seasons. So, although regionally or on a watershed scale, they tell an interesting story. When you actually get down to the site level, property level, there's going to be some discrepancies, and you can't necessarily use those to. You'd have to go out and measure at a time slice to be able to say at any given moment what that hydraulic gradient is.
Sorry to be a pain. Can you also show the original cut again? Cause
yeah,
I think I just saw green. So it was aquitar all through there, correct? There was actually no aquifer layer that most of those wells were punched into.
So there's the slice.
So he's slicing along that line that he selected.
Yeah.
So now we are just turning it around.
We're looking at a cross section.
And if you can show the various starting from the bedrock up, and then you can show how we build up the knowledge of the.
Okay. So here's a thin slice. So remove a bit of the clutter. It's probably easier to see. The bedrock, layer 1. The confined or deeper aquifer. Again, these thin discontinuous lenses. The aquitard that encases those and isolates, in most cases, this upper regime from the lower. And then the upper aquifer, which most of the groundwater uses in that area are relying on.
So
So-
what kind of depth would that be?
Depth. So I can just on here. Whoop. So that's about 50 meters. 150. That's 150. And then the water levels. See, here's a good example. This well was drilled in 1979. Times were good back then, and they drilled a shallow well, probably got the water that they needed, and had 10 GPM. Here's another water level. Let's see what happens here. Oh, 1975, 3 GPM. Oh. 1971 was 76. One of the other interesting aspects, I'll just go back to the PowerPoint briefly here. One of the other interesting discoveries during the modeling process was that the bedrock aquifer system, there's actually some really good information there in the wells database, and I went a bit further, probably than I should have, but oh, sorry. Your phone, I gotta use it. Yes. Okay. One of the interesting facets of the bedrock system is there are two distinct bedrock regimes throughout Landsville. One is dominated by the Nanaimo group sedimentary rocks, sandstones and shales, and the other one is dominated by volcanic bedrock. They have likely different chemistry, different water quality, and different characteristics. There's a fault trend running all the way from Cottle Creek, Lily Valley, all the way along to the swamps at the headwaters of Bloods Creek. And there's a whole series of wetlands and creeks, surface water features all on that fault trace. They coincide again with Bloods Creek, and then out here at the very end with Narston Creek. Is that how you pronounce it? Narston? A lot of the bedrock wells to the south, upper Landsville, are quite deep. And interestingly enough, drillers are paid to find water. They drill, they find water. Where they find water in these areas is quite deep, and it coincides with this fracture zone that runs roughly southeast northwest. The overburden aquifers, at this scale, this thin little layer up here. The bedrock system, much deeper system, potentially older groundwater, and with two very distinct regimes on either side. Again, these are well yields. I've been told that there's some of the well yields in around Landsville are not inaccurate. some big producers apparently in the bedrock system that are tapping into this fault zone. If we step back a bit further and look at more of the regional system, the fault trend that we've mapped here, it lines up pretty well with these parallel thrust faults that run up into, this is the foothills property, line up with those, and these are some of the wells drilled for that project. And we have, as far as the producing fractures, we have about 100-meter plus difference in elevation between the landspill bedrock system and the system. These thrust faults are all oriented this way. So what does that mean? There we go. The bedrock system is a very different entity. Water is contained within fractures as opposed to within the pore spaces between sand and gravel. And these fault zones can act as conduits or barriers. We don't have enough information to decide or to say where the barriers within that zone are, where the conduits are. That would require further study. However, it's an interesting part of the model that we can say, well, potentially along this area, there may be communication between this fracture zone and surface water. These faults can run all the way up into the shallow regime. Or they could act as barriers, in which case flow will be impeded across that. It may also be patchy. Certain areas along that fault zone may be conduits, certain areas may be barriers. Any questions?
So First Creek is a conduit, a main conduit through there. First Creek?
Let's Creek, it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. Likely the bedrock is weaker and more fractured up along the fault trend, so it probably got eroded preferentially during the glaciation and subsequent erosion events. So that's where the creek is. Or is it the bedrock is a weak zone, so there's water there? It's tough to say. You have to do fairly detailed study to determine along that length what that relationship is. I think maybe it's good enough at this point to say, well, there is a relationship there. The faults, the creeks, they're all interconnected. And there is a role that they play.
So,
Okay, hang on, Brenda.
yeah,
For a sec. Council, if you guys got any questions related to the presentation? Start with Councillor Holson and Councillor Holfer.
Two, please. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Awesome.
Sure.
Yep. And the second one, does the software have, can you do process control simulations on it? So based on the inferred volume, run a simulation to determine the impact that drawdowns have?
Yeah, the 3D, I mean, numeric model?
Sure.
Like a groundwater flow model?
Well, I'm assuming that from the model you have,
Yeah.
there's a volume of the various layers.
Yeah.
And then can you run a simulation where, if you have a drawdown of X, what that will do to the volume, and then what that will do to the levels based on how the model's been set up?
Yes, I built the NRCan did a numerical model. They did, first of all, a 3D conceptual model similar to this that ends at the Landspill and News boundary. And then they use the same software to export the physical volumes, or the geo volumes, to run numerical model. So yes, this software could generate the seed components for that model.
So this is primarily a graphical database then?
Yeah.
Dump that out into it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is, let's call it a 3D conceptual model. So we know where the aquifers are, we know the geometry of the aquifers, we know the slope of the water table, the elevation of the water table, but in order to understand the behavior of an aquifer, if you have 10 wells and you extract water from these 10 wells, what will be the effect on the water table? Will it drop? Will it drop by a meter, by 10 meters, or 1 centimeter? Then you need to use numerical models. And these numerical models are another type of models. We will use the information from the 3D conceptual model. We can input that into the numerical, and then you use the numerical to do your scenario and your numerical simulation. It's two different types of modeling.
Okay.
Like in order to have a reliable numerical model, you need a very strong, very robust conceptual model, and we have done it.
Do they dynamically link, or is it? It's static's not the right word, but you have to export from one and import to the other, and then do the same to link. Okay.
Yeah, because then in order to start the numerical model, then you need to input precipitation, evapotranspiration, information on a result from pumping test, which provides you some transmissibility, some parameters that you can start inputting into the aquifers. Right now we know the aquifers, but we don't know if they are very coarse gravel or very fine sand. Right? So you have to add this other layer of information in order to start generating the dynamic of the groundwater. Does it make sense? Councilor Copeland.
With respect to the Harvey Road well field and the surrounding area, is there any part of the surrounding area where there are no wells that maybe jumped out at you as too bad there isn't a little more information there? Are there any gaps, obvious gaps?
Do you want to bring the picture of the Harvey Road?
Well, I guess here I'll just zoom into that area.
Can you put a road on top?
Okay, let's start from the bird's eye view that everyone can recognize. So here's the highway, and here's the Harvey Road well field. And if I just fade out the topography, aerial imagery, you can see where that model following is.
Mm-hmm.
I guess any additional information would be helpful, for sure. In areas where we have those gaps and uncertainty, it'd be great to have more information. I think probably an easier and less expensive, potentially, exercise than drilling up a bunch of wells would be to really get a handle on the wells that we do have in the system. Are they in the right location? And that could potentially, I know the RDN is working on that in some of their critical areas to go out in the community and GPS those locations.
But you understand your question. We have information here and we have information, we don't have anything in between, right? So it would be worth on, now that we know, because we drilled here, hoping that we would still be, within the aquifer of the well, no luck, wasn't there, right? So now we could reduce the distance and drill here, and are we dealing with just, a foot of aquifer, or it's still not there? So we can better define the geometry of aquifer as we collect data. Same thing here. We were hoping for this same aquifer, but it's not present here. And we have like a valley system right here. So we have a bedrock which has been eroded by the glaciers and which have created valleys. Some of the valleys are very narrow, and they will drive and they will control the geometry of some of the aquifers. The same thing it would be worthwhile to drill here and see, are we still hitting the aquifer? Maybe here we'll have a 10-foot aquifer and say, oh, maybe it's shaped like that,
Right.
There's a finger in it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, is if there's any sort of gray areas.
Councillor Haney and Councillor Giselbrecht.
So do we have this for all of Landspell? Yes. Or is it just on certain areas?
And all this, what the model that we gave you, you can view it yourself.
Okay.
We'll provide you access to the file, and there is a viewer that you can download, which is free.
Okay.
And there are some very simple tools and way to operate the model. The knife is where you want to slice. So you click on the knife first, and then you draw a line, and this is where your cross-section is going to be generated. So we can give you 10 bullets how to use the viewer, and you can play with that yourself. And it's fascinating because it's very interesting to be able to look at this 3D from underground.
So, and this is for anywhere. So if you were to go to Wood Acres area, could you do that to see what their aquifer looks like?
I'm actually running this on the viewer software. I'm not using the
fancy model.
The fancy one. This is what I've exported from the model.
Okay.
That's available in the really low-level viewer software.
That's great.
So this whole presentation was
Perfect.
what you would get, basically.
Huh?
Where's Wood Acres?
Elm and
Hayes
Hayes
Place.
and Alms and.
Councillor Gisbert.
Okay, Dr. Wangley, you've worked in this area. When I say this area, Lansville, Manoose, Pleasant Valley for many, many years, right? You have a program that shows every well that's been drilled in this whole area. Lansville, Pleasant Valley, over to Brandon Lake, and there's literally hundreds of them. And you use that data, and you have the depth of the well, the quantity of water, what type of strata is there, is that? So is that part of your science in putting together this demonstration here tonight? You look at all of those wells.
Correct. Correct. We have integrated that information. We have interpreted the information. Because what you see here is a clean version. When we have the column, we have the pink for the bedrock, we have the blue for the aquifer, the green for the aquitard. But Matt has done a lot of cleaning and sorting and looking at the log and what did the driller mean when he said it was a sluggish gray slime. Right? Is it a seal? Is it a teal? Is it a fine sand? So we have to do that translation. And then he looked at this borehole here, this borehole here, this borehole here, and from 3 to 5 meters there's sand. From 3 to 7 meters it was sand. From 2 to 4 meters it was sand. So probably this is the same layer. So you start connecting the dots, and then you do that in 2D. You do that in a cross-section 2D, and then you can start building the 3D. So it took days, to get that image.
Just one more follow-up. Excuse me, Brenda. How important is the watershed to the aquifer?
The watershed is the receptacle. It's where rain falls. And then you have aquifers. Some are shallow and they're not covered, so they will receive the rain right there. Some aquifers will be 10 meters deep, 20 meters deep, 50 meters deep, covered by 1 meter, 10 meter, 20 meter of till. So depending on that geometry, depending on the sequence of layers, a drop of rain will take 10 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years to reach the aquifer.
But the watershed is important to the ultimate regeneration of the aquifer.
Correct.
Whether it's
The watershed, the slope, the vegetation will water, as it falls, will it mostly end up as runoff and leave as a sheet of water and go to the foreshore, or will it have time to percolate and get into the subsurface and recharge your aquifers? It's that simple.
Councillor Kelsey? Sorry to be a pain. Can you go back to that Harvey Road window you had there that showed the wells and aquifer? Yeah, you had a zoomed in view that showed the aquifer, and I couldn't read the labels. I was just trying to get my bearings on some of the premier. Yeah, before you did the slice.
Oh, yeah. Take a slice off. The legends? Or...
Okay, yeah, just trying to read the labels. So there's a well right, I think that's the road coming down there.
Do you want to come here close to the screen?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's like an ID tag. So what's this one here?
That's the 102. Yeah, those are the well tag numbers, the unique ID of the wells within the BC well database.
Yeah, that's probably well 11. Yeah, yeah.
And that would be the
Yes, that's the well there.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay, and that was nice progress.
that's right.
Okay, thanks.
When it comes to the standpoint of this is where water is sitting when this well was drilled, but it doesn't tell us necessarily how fast it would recharge, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you need to input other type of information. Yeah.
That we don't currently have.
And that at some locations we have, as soon as you do a pumping test on a well, you acquire a lot of information about the dynamic of the aquifer and the characteristics of the aquifer at that location.
And
There are
that's,
two key parameters that quantify aquifer. One is the transmissivity, and the other one is storability. Those two, and once you have that, you can start plugging that into equations and understanding how water will move over time and how much water you can take, etc.
and this was built from the residential wells that were drilled and the information that the driller at the time, and you know, they kind of look at, oh yeah, sure, 10 gallons a minute sort of a thing, but they're not pumping it 72 hours or anything for me, correct?
That's correct. A lot of information that we have is drillers reported estimated yield. Right. And for some wells, the minority, which have been studied more deeply, then we have a more precise yield.
Yeah, like the district wells, for example. Councillor Corporal?
Yeah, for the confined aquifer on Harvey Road, can you not, through slicing, follow back the aquitard and figure out where the recharge area is for that?
Well, that's a good question.
It's what
Anyway.
you have said. You know, probably there is a recharge from underneath, from the bedrock, and there is also a recharge from the upper aquifer. Depending on the geometry of the aquitard, if we have thinner windows, then you will have more infiltration from the upper aquifer down.
So this blue area here is where just letting the interpolation run its course, I have a communication between the lower and the upper.
Yeah.
Is it real? I can't say.
But pumping tests of the Harvey Roads well field indicates like leaky aquifers. A leaky aquifer is an aquifer which receives water, either from the top or from the bottom.
Well, I think in the recent work that was done by Lowen indicated that it was most likely bedrock because of the change in chemistry.
Oh, yeah.
Over time, over the course of the pumping, the water became older looking.
Yeah. What do you staff do you not find with the records that there's a correlation between heavy rainfall and recharge and your well levels? I thought they were somewhat reactive.
Yeah.
So if the wells are somewhat reactive like that to weather events, would that not indicate recharge from the surface somewhat?
Well, it doesn't. Rainfall, when it occurs everywhere throughout a watershed, there are areas where it will all be runoff, 100% runoff. Areas where it will be charged, but that whole system will then start to move, and you're seeing not the direct. It's not directly at the well, but it's that everything behind this. Moving. Yeah.
That's great stuff.
Anything further from council? Okay, it's not usual that we do this, but recognizing the importance with respect to water, is council all right if we allow individuals from the public to ask questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Brenda, I believe you.
I have a question. Simple
I've been
question.
waiting.
A simple question. You have two colors of blue for aquifers.
Mm-hmm.
So one is a contained and one is an uncontained.
Mm-hmm.
Does the uncontained recharge the contained one?
Well, that was what we were just.
Does it flow?
Yeah, the unconfined can potentially communicate with the confined. However, by definition, confined means that it's relatively isolated.
So if we draw off the confined
Mhm.
and the unconfined is there, will it refill it?
It really is function of the pressure in the two aquifers.
Okay,
If
yeah.
you have the unconfined aquifer here, you have the confined here. If the pressure here is much higher than here, then the water will flow
Yeah.
down. If it's the contrary, if this one is related to a ridge way up here, then it will be under very high pressure. And in that case, the water will move from the confined deep aquifer
Oh,
up.
yeah, that's it. Got
Okay.
it. Yeah, so they can recharge each other depending on the
Correct.
topography and
Correct.
the pressure.
And in most of the cases, they do. It will be extremely rare to have two aquifers exactly at the same pressure. If they are at the same pressure, it's because they are connected.
And the uncontained one, does it flow?
The
Move?
water always moves in the ground. Always.
Like a river or just slow?
It can move, not like a river. It will flow relatively fast. It will go through that room in minutes
Yeah.
in bedrock.
Okay.
Okay, in
Yeah.
an open fracture in bedrock. In sand, it will take
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Got you. Thank you.
Yeah, Sir Chess, going back to that slide you just had a little bit ago, because it infers that there's hydraulic communication across the Cottle Creek Fault. The Cottle Creek Fault kind of parallels the highway from, say, Ware to Superior.
Yeah.
It's been suggested, the 7 or 8 hydrogeologists starting in 1980 occasionally slips out that it's said that the Cottle Creek Fault is a barrier, and that precludes any more recharge of the Harvey Road aquifer. Obviously, your model doesn't think that. And I'm wondering, if you guys think that the Cottle Creek Fault is, in fact, a hydraulic barrier. And if you say yes, then how is Harvey Road aquifer? Now, Dr. Wenley did infer that the aquifer 213 is recharging Harvey Road aquifer. So is the insinuation that both 213, 215 are charging up Harvey Road, and is that watershed upgraded of the Cottle Creek Fault, so therefore is it moving past the Cottle Creek Fault in order to recharge?
We need, I hate to do that, to say that, but we need to do more. Right? This is quite recent. A month ago, we had no idea of the importance of that fault, and how when Matt came to see me and said, it's very interesting when I start putting 10 wells, 20 wells, 50 wells, 100 wells. There is a message here. It's interesting that if you can show the 3D of the deep of the plane of the bedrock and the deeper one and the not as deep one.
Maybe explain what the Cottle Field Fault is.
So we really started to build this 3D picture. This is the interest and the aim of those models is to see the continuity of that fault and how long that fault is, right? So now we are quite confident about the geometry of that system. What's very important now is to start putting information on the pressure on one side of the fault and pressure on the other side of the fault. Do we have a system where we have a higher pressure on the upstream side, or a lower pressure, and by how much? So we'll see if the fault has a collector and a conduit, or if it's gauged with clay and it's a big impermeable barrier. And right now we haven't done that.
So can you show where the fault is?
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
It's his fault.
It's my fault.
So this is the fault.
It's like you know your
This
kids
is
so
the
well.
system here.
Yeah, the fault runs on a. It's a shot. Use it there, so see if I get it. Yeah.
And if you can actually just show the background.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just turn everything on. Okay. Yeah.
And
That beam.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the fault forms the separation between this brown and this purple. And it runs on a diagonal at the surface, and then it plunges down also on a slope. So you can see it here.
Bring it to the phone so that you can see it.
I'm sorry, the lighting is quite dark.
Yeah.
I'm just going to slice it here.
Yeah, like that. You can really see that.
So I'm just going to slice it through here.
Oh, is that? I'll have to look on the
I'm
incident.
going to put it in here. So that's
Right.
what it looks like. I think, in answer to your question, it's probably patchy. Nature's patchy. You know, it may be conduit in some areas, it may be a barrier in other areas. It would be great to have all the information, but we don't. What we can maybe infer from at least that trend is that if there has been movement on that fault. I don't know. It's not a moderate fault, but that movement likely caused stress within the bedrock all around it. So there's perhaps enhanced fracturing along that zone, which is why a lot of the wells were drilled into that zone. And there's at least some cursory evidence that there's some good producing wells over there.
But also the wells, there was wells here, and these ones here are steeper, but they drill and they got water, right? So there is a conduit along that fault.
But I think Denise's question was where is it? Is it like along the hydro lines, or is it higher up in the foothills? Where's the actual fault?
It's on the lower. You can go.
There's several faults.
The 2D one. Just to show.
Is it like Highway 19? Is that the fault?
On the highway.
off an earthquake and go in the water.
It's on the highway.
Show just the fault and
It's-
topography. Can you see?
It's red a little bit.
Poor Matt.
Wow.
So where is it?
So it faults here. Maybe I should use the laser. So
it's
here's the faulted depth, and then the trace is basically along the highway.
Huh? Yes.
And then it starts to depart from the highway up here.
Where's that?
This,
Is that the foothills?
No, the foothills.
no, the foothills is back here. I don't have the.
We're still dealing with lower lands here.
Yeah.
Of course.
It always goes through the Aspen Grove, right?
Huh?
And then it follows the headwaters of Bloods Creek, Upper Bloods Creek. So here's the fault.
This is our fault.
Along here, there's just on the other side from Home Depot and Ryan Road is here. There's some wetlands, and then the creek, Bloods Creek, and then just to the south of the highway.
But you're right, when you look, because the RV well field is right here, so the fault is not too far.
So you go home back to get it out.
Mr. Hallowell.
I'll try. With your understanding of the geology of landfill, and understanding that we have months of dryness, and we have months of more rain than we need, is there a natural area in landfill where you would say, if I was to create a reservoir and capture and contain water in the winter months to sustain us in the summer months, it would be very practical location with very minimal amount of money being spent to create this area? I mean, we talk about clay areas and different. I'm not seeing the
That's a $10 million question.
Well, you're the nearest, like,
But I think we are one step toward that answer.
thank you.
I think your house is on the border, though.
Mr. Gieselberg.
Oh, yeah, I've read the pump test reports for the Clark Road and the Ryerson properties, and water resources have been developed there. Given, and I believe they're about 100 gallon per minute well yield, which is about 500 cubic meters a day. Do you suspect there's other areas in Lanceville that contain what I would call municipal quality water resources that could be developed?
I'm going to defer to
The chance of having very high, like over 100 GPM wells in Old Lanceville is relatively low. Because we are dealing with relatively thin aquifer.
In Aquifer 215.
With my understanding and the number of holes that I've drilled,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you get more than 3 meters of aquifers, you are very, very lucky.
Okay.
On that point, you mentioned lower Lanceville. What about upper Lanceville? Does the same apply in upper Lanceville? Is there any possibility of
we
an upper
have, this
Lanceville?
is in the Superior Road area, you have a very thick deposit of sand and gravel. You can see it from the road, right? But it's not saturated. You have to go quite deep in order to get the water. So it's why these wells, they are good wells, but they are the 5 GPM, 10 GPM, 20 GPM, if you're lucky. Because the thickness of the saturated material, the real aquifer, is limited.
Question on the modeling side. In the algorithm of that, is there any compensation? Because you're kind of indicating a depth and thickness with regards to it. Is there any sort of calculation in there involved with depending upon when that well was drilled during the year? Like if one was drilled in November versus July?
Yeah, you could sift through it and you can sift through it, or I could sift through it and just isolate, probably not time slices, but I've isolated based on what unit that water level it corresponds to. If it's a water level measured from a shallow dug well, I would take that out. If it's from the intermediate quadra, or from the deeper system, and just isolate those, and then, or versus a bedrock well.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. But to do time slices, there's not enough data.
Okay. Anything further? Councillor Golson.
Regarding the thrust fault, what's your preferred data source to determine the degree of communication across it? Boreholes, people drilling wells,
Pumping test would probably
pumping tests.
Or even a good snapshot in time. Do a survey of the depth of water in network of wells, 20 wells, 50 wells. And let's say in June 2016, what the water level? And do we see a step that we can relate to the fault? That also could be a way of assessing it.
So I see quite a few wells to the left. Is there enough wells on the right side to get a good data set then, if it's coordinated appropriately?
I think probably, in this area here, I think there's good density.
Oh, okay, so there's quite a few to the right. That's right. I see the count in there back there. Yeah, yes.
There is quite a lot of complexity just in the raw well information. Quite a lot of topography on that water table slope around the fault.
Yeah.
Is that all I can say is there is that complexity. I don't know what the cause of it is. You'd have to do more detailed work to really determine what's going on.
Right. So that's what I'm just trying to get an understanding because so our Harvey Road aquifer is up to the top right there, and that blue outline you had, I think that was separate from that cluster of wells to the lower part, wasn't it? that's a different aquifer that cluster of wells is.
Here, this one.
Yeah.
Oh, that has both.
Oh,
But yeah, it's separate.
separate, yeah.
You're right, yeah.
So for us to get the degree of communication
Right.
for the Harvey Road aquifer,
Good point.
do we have enough wells
Yeah,
to?
no, good point. Like, unless there are other wells out there that aren't in the system. There may be. But I doubt he's probably his mantles. The hydraulic gradient, as it is across the area of Harvey Road, is fairly consistent. However, there isn't much information, so I can't say.
And this, you know what this, it's a 1 year?
That'd be
That's okay.
Mr. McRae.
Through your worship, Director of Public Works.
And thank you guys for this great presentation. It's very valuable information. Just a few questions, comments and questions. Just because of the information that you used came off the BC government website, correct?
yes.
Now there's been some...
Not with a lot of cleanup, because right now the BC Wells database is not really workable.
Yeah.
So we have done a lot of work ourselves to take that, clean that, so that we can start with a clean slate and a reliable source.
So on the wells throughout the district, I have all this information, but it's all on paper, so it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of go, this is great. From that point of view, though, there was a lack of confidence in a lot of the well drillers' information that was placed on that website. Just wondering if you guys actually cleaned it up to the point where you're comfortable in how accurate the information is.
You can tell when you bring everything into 3D and you look at it, and you know I've done this enough times now that I can see, oh, that's probably a mistake, or not a mistake, but it's an error. It's an error. It's not, that well's not in the right location, probably, or there's something not quite right with it. So for the bedrock fault area, I came in with an idea that I can see this fault trace through the subsurface. I can see evidence of it. There were anomalies that didn't line up. So what do you do with those? Maybe set them aside for now. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. I guess we'll get the viewers and all that kind of stuff, and we can cut and slice and spin all we want. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, the Seaside Community Society, March 30th, 2016 request. There was a presentation by Brenda there a few weeks ago with regards to the Seaside community and their activities, and there's a couple of suggestions within that. And we're going to refer to the committee as a whole for discussion. Council, a couple of things there. I'm going to deal with them kind of separately here. The first item was in the suggestion of a plaque with regards to the history of the hall. Comments, questions? Councilor Hain?
Who's paying for the plaque? Is it Seaside looking to volunteer that?
I'm not sure we've delved into that. There you go, fair enough. Anything further? Some guidance? Councilor Colacott.
To staff, or do we have any idea or what a plaque may cost?
Through your worship, not at this time. It's a very, very broad scope as to what this is cost.
You know, from my standpoint, more the concept and the content rather than cost. If cost of a plaque is holding us up, we've got bigger problems. So, I mean, in terms of it, there was a suggestion of recognition of the three organizations. It was the Old Lanceville Residents Association, the OAPO, and the Seaside Group, as well as, in my mind, kind of a broader recognition of the efforts of the community over the years, if that's the sort of aspect that we wanted to consider. Whether it includes some history or not, open for discussion. Councillor Cole.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I just think we need some more information. So, you noted the three organizations. It also says and people of the community. So I don't know whether there's other names to be listed or is it broader, and then from that scope we could figure out how big it would be and get a cost estimate. Figure out what the process is. Even coming up with the names that would be on the plaque. One step.
If any.
If any, yes.
Because there were many, many people involved in the building of it, so it could be huge, and you don't.
Councillor Mary?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I am having chewed over what's just been said and thinking it through. I think any kind of plaque has to be fairly concise in its content. One of the problems with naming people, unless there is a very, very specific and obvious founding member whose idea was this, you're going to miss somebody out. So I think if there's going to be a plaque, it needs to recognise the organisations that contributed and make some general reference to the people of the community who contributed to the building and development of this particular venue. I don't think a plaque like that would be very big, and I don't think it would be extremely expensive. I'm happy to sponsor that as a council, as a councillor and a member of this council. I think it's a worthwhile endeavour, but I think it has to be basic.
Further comments? I agree with the idea of not necessarily mentioning individuals, because the risk is you run missing somebody, recognizing the long history of it. I think possibly we can even get bigger from the aspect of consideration of kind of historical plaques in a variety of places. So, for example, this building here was a fire department building in the 1950s, and that's a consideration. So whether or not there should be some recognition of that, so more of a recognition program than necessarily a specific building, although with regards to Costin Hall, in fact it's now called Costin Hall. Basically it was at a LID annual general meeting where surprisingly the motion came forward, in fact, from Brian Blood with regards to changing the name from Centennial Hall to Costin Hall. Next morning it was Costin Hall. There was good reasons put forward at that meeting, but putting a name to a building as time goes by and history disappears to a certain extent is the danger. So that's sort of an aspect of, if we're going to go and put a plaque to recognize those organizations, I think we should also consider recognition of who that was named after and why. So is there any specific action that council would like to do or recommend at this time? That was going to be a motion.
I saw that.
Move receipt.
Okay, just basically move receipt of the attachments by Councillor Hames, seconded by Councillor Geselbrecht. Any further discussion?
I just think it's worth pursuing, and I think that we'll pursue it.
Any further? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now, separately from that was a request or consideration, recommendation, let's call it, with regards to a civic land and building advisory committee with regards to the possible future of both the church and Costin Hall and or the lands associated with them. Council? Committee? Councilor Hamm.
Actually, I'd like to see this, for now, rolled in with the OCP review. It's one of those things about where does the community see that area going? It's kind of like part of the bigger discussion of the whole downtown and the civic lands, and I think it's another piece that we could get some feedback on. And this is a perfect time to do it.
Okay. Further? Councillor Wilson.
I concur. Should this be a more focused group though? Don't really know the scope that this could go, but there's the potential for this to get quite broad in scope, where it could go, when it might be, if it's going to be replaced, if it's not. You start to tie economics into it, there becomes a lot more things to consider. So, while it makes sense on one hand to do it in an OCP review, will it get diluted with all the other stuff that's happening at the same time and not end up with the same maybe degree of meaningful output?
Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree broadly with Councillor Coulson's remarks. I think some kind of advisory body at some point is a great idea. I'm reluctant, though, at this point to support the appointment of a specific committee to do so in view of the work plan that is being developed at the moment with regard to OCP review, the water master plan, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, I'd hate to see this just shelved. Oh yeah, it's a good idea, let's just receive it and forget it. So I'm kind of straddling the line here. I don't think we have the capacity to pursue this in the depth and breadth that it deserves at this point in the near future. On the other hand, I do think it should be a major factor in our plans down the road. And I don't mean 5 years, 10 years down the road. I mean in the relatively near future, but certainly I can't see anything happening this year. So to give direction now on forming a committee, I think it's too soon, too much.
Councillor Coulson.
It has come up a number of times in our budget process. Do we spend money or don't we? We've all had that conversation. A lot of groups had that conversation. I think it's a good idea. I agree with Councillor Neary that we've got a lot on our plate. Staff have a lot on their plate right now. And even earlier comments there about how big does this get or how big doesn't it? Maybe a first step would be, for new councillors particularly, to have staff prepare an inventory of the district's buildings and lands, because we're talking about Costin Hall and Church, and I do think that in one regard you want to focus on that because it's particularly large feature in the community. But as per Councillor Neary, I don't want it to fall off the table either. But it may tie into other properties, other park properties, tennis courts. So we don't have a starting point. So maybe the starting point is just preparing inventory, so we can report to the council that said, here's a map, here's our properties, this is park, this is fee simple, here's the cost and all. And then at that time, if that was to happen in the foreseeable future, not immediate future, then we could have a conversation around how to move forward, and whether we just do it specifically to these or whether we broaden it out. I mean, we're going to have a public process to talk about it. Maybe we should be talking about the other properties at the same time. Maybe we could have a town hall meeting in the fall that's basically on parks and civics buildings.
Further discussion. Councillor Coulson.
It'd be good to get that information. I don't think it's a very long list, though.
Might be surprised.
We could probably rattle it off. To me, this is almost like a parallel conversation we had about the water task force and the master plan regarding this committee and possibly the OCP review and such. If a group such as this does get going, their work can tie into what's happening with the OCP review. Maybe offload that group. I don't see duplicate work necessarily being done. Perhaps a wee bit of overlap, but I think it'd be good to have a group going and looking at options, kicking about ideas, and much more efficient than us trying to do it around the council table.
I'm not opposed to including it in the OCP process, if that makes sense. When we look at the terms of reference for the OCP, we could have a component of that that looks at what I was mentioning there earlier, the broader list of publicly owned properties. But like I said, maybe as a first start, let's just get a plan that shows what we have, and like I say, whether it's fee simple or dedicated as part of it.
Councillor Hayman and Councillor Paulson.
Well, I think the comments about capacity and meeting fatigue are all going to be appropriate. We've got so many things going right now that I think people are going to be exhausted and worn out when we keep creating more and more committees and subcommittees. And it's just one of those things that, yes, it is important, but is it a priority right now? I just think that we have to look at what our strategic priorities are and let's deal with those first. Otherwise, next thing you know, we're going to be hiring more staff to deal with this stuff. And I don't want to see us go there. So I'd like to see us try to include it in the OCP, because that is part of a group that's meeting anyway. We're not creating a whole other group right now.
Councillor Paulson.
Sir, just a general question. I didn't pay much attention when we did the 2005 OCP plan. Do you run the risk of getting too much stuff into the OCP process and diluting it? Isn't quite the right word, but you might have people support it for one component but not for another. To me, this is a very good example of something that's discrete and almost merits a discrete decision on its own. If it gets rolled into an OCP review process, can it get diluted, undermined, overlooked by other matters that might mean more to other people?
Certainly you run that risk depending on what level of detail you get to as well, because what I kind of see when it comes to the connection to the OCP isn't necessarily specific to those lands, but kind of a broader based aspect of considering what do we want as community amenities, or what do we need as community amenities to create that community fabric. That may or may not be that building in that location. The tennis court property, for example, has been mentioned. So that may be a place to relocate a community venue of some sort too. So where my worry is if you get into it's called the minutia of a specific building, that's the point where you could run into somebody saying, I don't like the plan because of this piece. Mm-hmm. But if it stays at a broader level, you could do it. I think we'd be running into danger going to a specific aspect within the OCP process.
Well, then if it stays broad, we're 2 years out from really having a new OCP, you then kind of restart now and looking at the building in detail. Because ultimately where I'm kicking around my head is the economics of this. There was a grant that went through last summer, and I believe it was up to $500,000 for community halls, museums, tourist information centers. We've got $160,000 in the capital reserve fund for the hall. The church, and $120,000 I think for the hall. There's some fairly major expenditures that we've identified over the next 6 years. Are we going to end up doing those because we haven't made a decision on the future of those buildings because we are avoiding a decision? I don't mean it to say like that, but we keep kicking it down the road in a manner of speaking. Yeah.
Councillor Colquitt?
I guess one of the things, do we include it in the OCP or not? Maybe what we could do is have staff include that evaluation or recommendation when developing the terms of reference to the OCP. Give it some thought. Here's the terms of reference to the OCP. Here's our options with respect to these buildings. We can include it. This is what it would look like, or we can do it separately. This is what it would look like. And then we'd be making more of an informed decision at that time, looking at the OCP. But I'm a little leery of, on one hand, I'm a little leery of putting it in there, but on the other hand, I appreciate and agree with your comments too about the bigger picture. So rather than making a decision right now, I suggest we make a motion to that effect. Not yet, but I would make a motion to that effect. That we have staff look at the pros and cons at the time of developing the terms of reference for this.
Mr. McRae.
Sorry, that's just following up to Councillor Goldhall's comments. Is the staff would be a little bit concerned at directing a specific piece of the OCP for the aforementioned conclusion that that's going to be the way it is, that's going to be, they're just going to do the citizens, and I appreciate that staff obviously are taking a look at the OCP in terms of reference right now to make sure that we are looking at how we enjoy our community amenities and what those will potentially look like, and to tease that out from the communities, what they'd like to see. My concern is that we need preloading a solution of what we're at.
I don't quite understand that.
If you say that Costin Hall is going to be there, that we look into solution about Costin Hall, then we're assuming it's going to be at the same place, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what's happening right now.
Well, I'm saying, as part of the OCP review, ask the broader question about the future of not specifically the hall, but rather than having a separate stream where we go out to the public and ask for input on the future of recreation buildings, or do we do that as part of the OCP review? So I'm not predetermining it, I'm just saying which venue or which avenue do we use to go out for the public input?
Sorry, it's a little off.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
So I was thinking having staff give that consideration during the development of the terms of reference and come back and say, we've given this a lot more thought and here's the two options.
Okay, staff can take a look at that.
Councillor Gisler?
We've got the Seaside Community Organization. I doubt they have their pockets bulging with money to go out and do a survey, to go out and collect information over the next year, 2 years, about what people would like to do. Maybe that could be funded from council. My concern is that the more general OCP review, we've got developers. A developer of the downtown area may come forward and say, I want to build a big recreation center back here. I may want to build a pavilion for farmers markets, for concerts, to really make a nice downtown area. In which case, if that was to come forward, the subsidiary buildings like the Heritage Hall and Costin Hall would become, they could be used for something, obviously, people are using them now, but it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be worried that much about what we do with those because we'd have a whole new center down here. So I just think it's premature at this time, unless the Seaside community and the good volunteers there came to council and say we'd like somebody to send out a brochure or something like that, because you're on the heartbeat right now of what's happening, and people will probably stop you in the street and say, hey, I wish we could put that coffee shop in that old Heritage Hall. Well, there's a good idea. Councilor Colson.
But before you ask the question, you need to know what the answers are. Right? So here we go around and around again. Right? Not that I disagree, but what are we going to ask the people? What are the options? Your example of a developer building a pavilion and stuff, that's a question to ask, but there's trade-offs with that too. So it's a simple question and it's not a simple question, and that's where I think more people trying to tackle it is a good thing. The committee's free. They can be bouncing around ideas, costing stuff out, pros, cons list, whatever we want to do. Gets an option list in front of us. That might feed into the OCP perhaps.
Councillor Neary.
Thank you, Worship. I agree with Councillor Gisselberg that to form any kind of committee at this point would be premature. I think it's very easy for council to latch onto an idea that has a lot of merit and run with it, and then find that that's really not the road that we want to go down. I like the discussion that's taking place around this subject. I would be extremely reluctant to hand over the question of the future of civic facilities to an external organisation, with no offence intended whatsoever to the Seaside Society, but it is not their place to be looking into the future of buildings that they lease from the landlord, which is sitting right here. It's District of Lanceville, represented by council. So the future of these kind of facilities and amenities within the community are the responsibility of council to determine. And council, I would think, would determine that with some public input at some point. I'm reluctant to commit to any action right now. I think we need to look at the future of these properties. I'm just not sure under what terms of reference that we will move that forward, which means that, you know, I think we need to buy ourselves some time. And I think Councillor Colclough's suggestion that we seek some options for looking at this particular subject through staff when they develop the terms of reference for the OCP is a pretty good idea, because, you know, to be plucking things out of the air and just throwing them on the table because we think that's what people want right now, it's not a good approach. We need to be more systematic, and we need to have a really good framework for determining what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So I want to leave this to lay at the moment, but if Councillor Colclough is going to bring a motion to direct staff to bring forward some options down the road as to how we might approach this question, I'm quite open to that.
Councillor Haynes.
Just move receipt of the staff report. We can go around forever on this. Move receipt.
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Colclough. Any discussion on receipt? Councillor Colclough?
Well, I think staff have a pretty good idea of why we're stuck in the circle here, so they can help out. But one last comment too, it's not really about what we do with the building. It's what we want to do in the community that we therefore would use the building for. So it's a bigger exercise.
Well, and that's where, when it comes to the OCPs, what are the needs of the community?
Yeah.
And if it happens to be served by that building, great. We need to bulldoze it.
Right.
I'm not going to say great, but okay. And so I still think we're back at the OCP, but on a broader basis than that property.
Yeah.
And our staff can provide us with an inventory of the properties, but that's pretty quick and pretty easy. There they are. So I think the idea of the OCP, fine, but beyond that, we're not there. And if the building's been around for 60 years, we're making a long-term decision. If we wait 2 years before that decision so that it is right, we wait 2 years. The building's not falling down today. Any further? All those in... Sorry, Councilor.
So what do we do around the economics of it? We got these baskets of money there to do some pretty substantial projects.
That's great. Just because you got money to do substantial projects, in my opinion, doesn't mean you do a project.
Very good. So do we make that official in some fashion?
There hopefully will be money all the time, but I hate to go forward into a project just because there's money. It's let my kids with money in their pocket and never come back with anything. Sorry for my kids. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Draft grants and aid policy. So referred by the Cal on February 15th. There's a staff report as well as a draft amended policy regarding grants and aid. I don't know, staff, anything you want to add compared to what's in the report? Okay. All right. So it's back to the committee with respect to it. There were some concerns raised regarding some reporting, some specific event aspects, things like that. Actually, if I might turn to staff, on the draft amendment, could you highlight the additions compared to the original version? Sort of broad overview. Sorry. So, like, for example, the policy has been rewritten and a little more specific on some things.
So the most substantial amendment on the draft was in relation to the request by the committee for us to include an introduction similar to what they use in the city of Edmonton on their policy. So when you're looking at page 11 of the draft amendment, I'd say that everything under policy is somewhat new, except for the 1, 2, 3. That's always been in there. So adding the funds available for grants are limited, subject to budgetary constraints, and may not be sufficient to fund any or all requests for grants made in any one year, through to awarding of grants is at council's discretion, and if granted is authorized by council resolution. That is new. The intent there was to sort of set the stage that council may not in every year issue grants. You're under no obligation at any time to issue grants. And also that your first priority really is for new projects. If someone or an organization, has received a grant in 1 year, they may not necessarily be considered the next year, depending on which applications you receive and how many and what your funds are that are available. So that one paragraph is substantially new. The next paragraph, in granting financial assistance through to the end of number 3, a for-profit organization. It has existed for some time in the policy. And then going into the next one, programs, activities / events must. And then programs on the next page, page 12, programs / activities, events must not. That is new. That is from the Duncan model that we had indicated appreciation for. And as well, I guess going on, successful receipt of a grant aid does not automatically guarantee funding in subsequent years. That's new. The procedure, when you get down to that section, there's a couple of bullets that were added in as requested in the discussion. The second bullet, names of directors of the organization. That was added in. And there's also some expansion on wording in there.
Thank you, Trudy. Councillor Nairn.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approves the amended grants and aid policy number 3000-1.
Seconded by Councillor Gilbert.
And speaking to that motion, I think the document that's before us reflects the majority of the comments that were made by Council and includes all of those, covers off all of those items that we felt had ambiguity or were difficult, were nebulous, they were not very, very clear. This is quite clear cut. I like the form that goes with it, the application form. I'm happy with this. I'm happy to support it.
Okay. Further discussion. Councillor Colville.
I'm just going to comment, when reading through, I thought there was a fair amount of repetition, but when I got in, I realized they were all points that needed to be repeated. So we're good. I'm okay.
Further discussion. Okay. I only struggle with the part on page 11 down the bottom, programs, activities, events must. The way it's written, it must meet all these items. The one that I actually struggle with is actually the third bullet, promote volunteering. There are organizations that provide great services. They're employee run, but they're not-for-profit organizations. And possibly for liability challenges, things like that, they can't have volunteers involved. So, for example, some of the activities that have been done previously with Boys and Girls Club, those are paid employees, generally speaking, or the people that are acting for them. Nothing I've seen in their literature per se around Lanceville is promoting volunteers like on this one. So I struggle with that third bullet being in there, not that I don't want to promote volunteerism, but it's making it a condition of.
How about if we add some words like when possible?
Okay. Okay. Friendly amendment okay on that, or you guys want a motion? It's only a recommendation to council, so. Mover and seconded? Is that all right? Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Schedule. Mr. McRae.
Yes, through your worship, this is a request to add an additional meeting for May 2nd to tackle both the lofty procedure bylaw and the water master plan terms of reference. Staff are trying to be as supportive as possible to get the information in front of council before the proposed or the planned meeting for June 2nd for the town hall meeting for water. We thought it was prudent that council had time to kick around the water master plan terms of reference before we headed into that town hall meeting. So we're asking for the addition to this meeting.
Could Mr. McRae repeat those two things that we're going to do? I didn't hear.
Sorry, the Harley just drove by. It's not mine. Yeah. Because council has asked for a town hall meeting for water, and it's on June 2nd, the only available times that we had to bring forward the water master plan terms of reference were literally days before that presentation was to occur. So we wanted to give council ample time to be able to kick those around and give us suggestions before we move to the meeting.
There's one other item you mentioned, I thought.
Procedure bylaw is very lofty, so we also wanted to try and tackle that at the same time as well, given that our finances and other meetings have taken precedence over that.
Through the mayor to Mr. McRae, is that recommendation regarding bylaw 52.1, could that come back on June the 2nd? Or is that coming back even earlier?
I believe it's May 25th. I'm sorry, May 28th, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely two very important topics, and I'd like to attend, but at this point in time, I cannot make that night, and neither can the mayor.
I'd like to speak for myself.
Yeah.
I haven't decided yet.
It's the tax deadline.
What?
Just in terms of our meetings, looks to me like all the Mondays are already filled, other than that one and or the 30th. So it doesn't leave anything. Now there's a committee of the whole and a regular meeting on the 9th?
Yes. It's the DCC bylaw review is at 5 p.m.
Okay.
and the regular meeting is at 7 p.m.
Okay, May the 16th special meeting at council?
Special meeting is at 7 p.m. If you wish to schedule a committee of the whole for 3 or 4, we could.
Oh, and the other Monday the district office is closed. Okay.
Tuesday.
Councillor Colson, and we don't have a motion on the floor.
No, procedure bylaw review, that's been floating out there for a year and a half. Can we, not to keep punting it down the road, but shall we punt it down the road another month or so, get into a more favorable time, and then possibly look at the water master plan, terms of reference, on the regular scheduled meetings?
Actually, the only regular meeting of council that we have is on the 25th.
Well, there's also
and the other part on the 9th.
I would almost argue that the water master plan terms of reference trumps the DCC bylaw review as well this time.
Okay. Staff is...
Just trying to work.
We're just looking at the calendar. We're wondering about committee of the whole on the 16th at 5 p.m. For the one topic, which the water plan.
Isn't that costing it too fine?
No, it's still, I mean, compared to the town hall meeting?
Well, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Your Worship, this is our only concern, is that we don't know what council plans to do once we provided this information, whether we've hit the mark or whether we're off base, and we're hoping we've hit the mark. So we're able to easily transition that off into the town hall meeting. 2 weeks gets close. It's not impossible. It just, we run the risk of not being as prepared as we'd like to be.
But recognizing that May the 9th, that was the DCC bylaw.
Yes.
So if we, water master plan on the 9th, DCC bylaw on the 16th, that provides an extra week for items related to the water master
We
plan.
would need to confirm with the consultant that was presenting on the 9th, their availability for the 16th. So we could,
Okay.
why don't we just make it generic, that there will be, one added for the 16th, and then we can switch it around?
Okay. Is that all right with council?
And did you have a preference on which Monday in June for procedure bylaw? Like, are people going to be away or anything? So you could add that in, June, so schedule 2.
So,
May 16th. And was 5 okay, or was that too early for May 16th?
it would have to be 5 because if we do have a special meeting at council at 7. I'd suggest we should do it at 5 then. No, May 16th. Right now there's a special meeting in council on May 16th. And then the suggestion was which day in June there?
Sorry, I just got to double check. We don't have stats or something weird.
There's no stats in June. There's a regular meeting at council on the 13th, another one on the 27th.
So we've got June 6th or June 20th?
6th.
Okay, so my suggestion to the committee is that we schedule a cow at 5 p.m. on May 16th and one at June the 6th. Time to be determined by
To
the
you guys.
member.
You tell us when.
For a cow on the June the 6th, 5 p.m. Okay. So, suggestion to the committee, May the 16th, 5 p.m. cow, and June the 6th, 5 p.m. cow. I guess I made that motion. Seconded by Councilor Neary.
Or maybe whichever you prefer.
Any discussion? And none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Public participation. Thank you, council, by the way, for that. Not a second. Saves me having to explain. Public participation. Okay, hearing none?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Brent Side, Howard Drive. I'm just very pleased that you entered into dialogue and discussion about the civic building and the possibility of recreation in the community in the future. We do have a dilemma in terms of its maintenance and what we do with it and what we don't do with it. But at least we had the discussion, and it was very interesting. It's the same dilemma that I think most of us have with it: is do we or don't we? Thank you.
Any additional? Councilor Gisbert.
I have an apology. Last meeting, we were discussing the Island Corridor Foundation. And I made sort of a bold statement to rip out the rails and put in trails. I was reminded the next day by a member of the community that that person works for the railway, and that there may be other members of our community that work for the railway. And keeping in mind that the Island Corridor Foundation has designated the corridor as a multi-use, multi-purpose corridor, and in fact we have a trail alongside the railway tracks. I'm going to change my war cry to put the trails next to the rails and offer my apology to those members who might otherwise be employed by the railway, and hopefully they'll be more employed by the trailways. Amen.
Thank you. Hearing nothing further, motion to adjourn. Councilor Neary, Councilor Colclough, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.